Welcome back to our second week in the Week in Strange. And again, it has been another very strange week. Jason and I both live here in the Pacific Northwest, where the sun has decided to drag its balls all across our faces. It's going to be 117 where I live today, and I think about 109 where Jason's living. So yeah, that in itself is very strange. We don't get weather like this, this hot, this early. So we're just going to get straight into the first story. Oh, and also, we'd like to sorry. Hold on. Should I introduce all three of us first?
Not necessarily. No, that's okay.
Okay.
Just say I'm here as usual with Thomas and Jason.
Okay. Here as usual with Thomas and Jason. We have put together some more strange stories to share with you guys today. So the first one, the headline reads, Directed Energy Attacks, the Invisible Threat Congress Wants Answers On. Going back to 2017, Politico has been reporting on government agency officials, spies, and diplomats affected by a series of mysterious illnesses. The victims say that they have suffered from tinnitus, blurry vision, loss of balance, and headaches. First documented case in the US was the employees at the embassy in Cuba. Symptoms related to these incidents have become known as the Havana syndrome. While experts have yet to conclusively identify the cause of these symptoms, some scientists believe they could be the result of microwave pulse weapons, a so-called directed energy attack by a foreign aid. I would say that it definitely feels like we're under attack today.
Yeah, I mean, if this is some kind of, I made a post in the Facebook group earlier this week wondering if they had fired up some kind of energy weapon here over the Northwest about heating up the atmosphere, or however they do that, like the HARP type technology, so that they could, try doing the whole climate lockdown thing. Because I think it was only, very recently that they said something that those words climate lockdown came into our common words that we're using on social media and everything. So it makes me wonder, is this some kind of weapon attack with heating up the atmosphere here over the Northwest? Or, is this just something like with space weather that we've got going on where, we talked about last week with the grand solar minimum? It could be either, could be a combination of both, I think. But again, these directed energy weapon things, it's something that my friends and I, when I was back in the military, we talked about this kind of stuff all the time, kind of joked about it sometimes, where whenever we would see like some janitor pulling up at the building we worked in, say, "Oh shit, here they come with the energy weapons again. Put your tinfoil hat on." But,
yeah, I think these directed energy weapons are very plausible. The only thing is they probably only work over a limited range, because then the energy field will start to spread out. But microwaves are incredibly dangerous. I don't think people realize just how dangerous they are. This is why your microwave oven is basically shielding in it. That would be like something from Chernobyl. A friend of mine, last year, he built. We helped him build a machine to do wood burning patterns on wood using electricity, like a kind of arcing. And we used the coil transformer from an old microwave, and we had to put this thing inside, like literally a tank to shield it from everything else, because the microwaves were making his hair stand up 10 feet away and making him feel dizzy and like he had the flu. Now, so it's totally plausible if you could get that power and put it into some kind of thing you could aim. That's exactly what these people are describing, is exactly what would happen. Basically, it rattles the nervous system. And when the nervous system is rattled, you have everything from dizziness, because you've got the inner ear thing goes nuts, but you'll also have things like your inability to fight infection. So you'll be much more susceptible to being killed actually by colds and flu. So I'd be surprised we don't already have it. But again, I don't think it's the kind of thing where they can have a satellite in space and fire it down at you. But all they have to do is get close enough to someone to shoot them with it, and they can do it, and they can like ravage their bodies without them actually, without a bullet or anything being in there. Remember the Russians got that guy in England about 10 years ago with an umbrella, a poison on the tip of an umbrella, walking by him on the street, and they stabbed the umbrella into him, and they put radiation into him, and he died a few days later in hospital. Well, they had trace there, but with the microwave, when you don't really have a trace, I feel dizzy, I feel sick, and then you die. So yeah, totally plausible, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're using it a lot.
Yeah, some of that the people who have been victimized by this say that they report those, what you were just talking about, Thomas, with dizziness, headaches, and nausea coming on very suddenly. It's like a sudden onset.
Yeah, the immune system, the nervous system, absolutely shattered by this thing. You know, microwaves are very, very dangerous, even in low levels. And this is why they're, you know, in many municipalities, when you have microwave transmitters, they're up in the very, very top of the antennas.
Yeah, because I mean, this could penetrate through, you know, drywall, aluminum siding, and everything on your house, right? Because you were talking about needing to have like a Chernobyl style lead or some kind of really thick metal on a microwave to insulate it, right?
Yeah, what we did was we got an old water tank, and we'd had like plate steel about 5 millimeters thick, and that was the only thing you could have it on top of it where we didn't feel that kind of tingling. So that's how nasty they are. You know, they will go through most things.
Yeah, so someone could be parked out on the street, or someone could fly a drone, or maybe an aircraft even over just, you know. But yeah, with it
go back past you in a car, you know, with some kind of facial recognition thing. The thing knows you and hits you with such a blast at like 10, 15 feet, you know, 8 or 9 meters, and that's enough to like shatter your nervous system.
Yeah, you would just go down really hard.
Yeah, and, you know, you had a mysterious virus, obviously. You know, and when your nervous system collapses and as a result your immune system collapses, he died of some virus that he had in his system. He might have HIV and it suddenly goes into AIDS or something. He might have had cancer cells that suddenly metastasize. It's really quite an evil way of killing someone.
Yeah, I mean, I'd heard about someone close to my family, a family friend back in the the late 80s, early 1990s, who died of a really quick, fast moving throat cancer. And the guy wasn't a smoker. He wasn't, he wasn't susceptible to any kind of thing like this. And then suddenly just bam, he got a really quick, fast moving throat cancer. And he was essentially, silenced and killed by this cancer. And, he was kind of an activist to an extent back in that era, and it makes me wonder with this kind of thing. Yeah, did they whack him with this? Same thing now. You said like a mysterious virus. They died of the Rona, or something like that. It could act. If you're lowering someone's immune system down, and you can kill them with a simple common cold, the coronavirus.
Yep, easily explained. Any other thoughts or comments before we move on
this weapon? Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine the Geneva Convention sanctioning, or any kind of weapons treaty sanctioning something like that, because it's worse than things like chemical warfare, dum-dum bubble bullets. But if anyone is using it, it would be the intelligence services whose weapon systems are outside treaties and so on. And so it'd be like more inclined to be someone like the CIA or the KGB or these kinds of operations, MI5.
Yeah, and they always hire out contractors too, like the Blackwater types. Like that's old news here in the US, where there's if you want to call them mercenaries or contractors. I served with a lot of guys that went off wanting to, or looked for a job trying to be a contractor when they got out, because essentially at that point, you're just kind of a mercenary. And yeah, they don't, those entities, I'm pretty sure, don't follow the Geneva Convention or anything, any code other than whoever pays them.
No, they don't, but they're also idiots, because when they get captured, they'll be the ones who'll be tortured to death, and they won't be handed over in prisoner exchanges or anything. And a part of me says, well, quite rightly,
right?
Yeah. Even in war, there's rules and honor,
Yeah, rules of engagement.
Yeah.
Okay, so right on to our next story. This one's interesting. There's been a major outbreak of Noctilucent clouds over Europe. A major outbreak of these Noctilucent clouds were reported over Europe, including France, Spain, Germany. Over these latitudes are considered rare, according to night sky enthusiasts, as these clouds are typically seen over higher latitudes. Last week, Noctilucent clouds were observed over countries inside the Arctic Circle. The clouds suddenly spread out towards multi-latitude regions and have been spotted over Paris, Madrid, Berlin, and other European capitals. It is pretty strange to observe Noctilucent clouds from these latitudes, said photographer Francisco Gil, who took a shot of these clouds as far south as Valencia in Spain on June 20th, 2021. Indeed, it is. Valencia is at 39 degrees, a latitude where Noctilucent clouds are almost never seen, noted Dr. Tony Phillips of spaceweather.com. For most of their history, Noctilucent clouds were discovered in the 19th century. The clouds have been found mainly near the Arctic Circle, and now they are spreading. So yeah, we'll have to link some photos of these clouds because they're quite stunning.
Yeah, I saw them last week or 2 weeks ago over here in the north. Very thin. They're very beautiful, actually. They're almost very magical and intense looking. They were all they were like the Northern Lights. They were predominantly like Iceland, Finland, Northern Finland, Land, Sweden, this kind of thing. If you're lucky, Spitsbergen, those islands up right up near the North Pole. And I saw them for the first time the other week, and I didn't give them any attention. I said, "Oh, they're pretty." I just thought they were regular clouds refracting the light in a strange way, but they were not. I looked online and they were saying they were all appearing all over Europe. Again, are we dealing with some kind to do with the pole shift, the magnetic changes in the sun? I mean, this is a big deal. I think this story is major. On top of like North America having its hottest day of the year today. I mean, I was looking at some of the temperatures up in Yukon, 47 degrees Celsius. Now, 40 degrees Celsius is, you get that in southern Spain, Valencia, like we just mentioned. 47 would trigger a national emergency. You now have near Arctic regions in North America now hitting Spanish emergency temperature numbers, 45, 47. And now we're seeing these non-Salentian clouds. I was trying to pluralize it over Europe, and yeah. So this is like more fodder for the pole shift, magnetic drift, sun changes. This is like the space weather thing is really going to be taken off. And again, you know, my putting on my my Gucci tinfoil hat here. Are we dealing with something? Is this the real story behind the cover story of the pandemic? Is there something else? Like, you know, I keep thinking, is there something else going on? But these clouds now. To put it into perspective, Valencia is about the same latitude as Miami, so you're talking about really far south. You know, so I don't know. It's strange. It's weird. It's a bit worrying. They're very beautiful. But
why are they there?
Yeah, and it's also the mythological aspects of it. This, you know, the whole thing of, I was talking about the volcanic energies coming down from the north. We had these piercing cold winds coming down and drafts coming down from the north. Now we have these beautiful clouds. There is, you know, we are living in the age of mythologies. We really are.
Yeah, this Dr. Phillips said, he says, when you see one, you're literally seeing a cloud of frosted meteor smoke.
Yeah. Even that's weird, isn't it? Like,
it's so weird.
It's, you know, meteor smoke in the upper atmosphere. I remember, do you remember about 10 years ago, there was they stopped all the flights in Europe, about 11 years ago, when there was a volcano in Iceland.
Yes.
And, well, we had no flights for about a week. And I went, and we had the most incredible blue skies, no clouds. I was amazed by how many meteors I saw in the daytimes. Because you'd think that they were aircraft trails. But I counted over that 1 week period about 4 meteor trails just near here that I saw in the sky. So that shows how many meteors are actually falling and burning up in the atmosphere. So even the fact that they're related to space even kind of adds this kind of spooky element.
Yeah, I mean, Thomas, going back to the mythological aspect of it, that's kind of the first thing that came to mind when I was looking at this story. Is you've been having all the auguries of the ace of the cold blade of the north, the ace of swords kind of archetype. And for me, synchronistically, when you first started talking about that, I remembered when I was in the Army. I was part of the 282nd Army Band, and we were attached to the 171st Infantry Brigade, and their insignia is a sword pointing upwards, mountains in the back, and then the Aurora Borealis there. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's totally the Ace of Swords as well. And just made me think that Aurora. Yeah, go ahead, Thomas. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's blurry.
What's at the bottom of the sword?
Blur. That's
Non-cement clouds.
Clouds.
Oh, look at that.
And what's at the top of the sword? The corona.
Yep.
The crown.
Wow.
Like I said, I mean, I'm a great one for reading the synchronistic and science and the archetypes, and I've seen enough of that stuff in my life to know that these things are not mysterious nothings or just happenstances. I really believe there's something to this. human consciousness is tapped into this stuff and it plays with us. We had Anthony Peake on here talking about that. But yeah, watch this spaces. That's what I would say. I'm sorry, Jason. What were you going to say?
No.
Yeah,
that was it. Like the if we'll probably put it up here on the screen, but the 171st Infantry Brigade patch, if you look at it, it's the Ace of Swords, and I'm sure Sergeant Major Cook and all you people that I served with, I hope you guys watch this video too and see that. And yeah, it's
but it is spooky. The top that card,
yeah.
You know, it has those clouds, those beautiful blue lateral clouds. I just can't get it focused on. Look at my face. No, I'll put a picture up later.
Yeah. But that's just pretty cool. I think that there definitely has something to do. We're going back to the space weather thing. I mean, they say that these are the effect of meteor trails, but what's you know, we normally have meteors coming in all the time. So is there some kind of magnetic effect on our magnetosphere or on the atmosphere that the sun is changing the you know, the way that we view the clouds, the way that the northern lights are? I don't know if you've had any. If you've had more of a northern light season up there in Ireland right now, Thomas.
We have. It's been kind of lame this year, to be honest with you. I mean, normally you'd hear a few stories around April and May that are typical. People go to the mountains here to take photographs above the sea, but it's been pretty low key this year. They haven't really come down so far.
So then maybe that does have something to do with the grand solar minimum. Then that as one goes down, the other comes up, or something like that. But yeah, that would be causing. Yeah. But that would be causing, if we have this incredibly warm weather again, if this is something naturally occurring where, you know, there's a cycle, a solar cycle, like a grand solar year that, what is it, 24,000 years or 12,000 years? There's the sun cycle. And right now we're going into, if we want to say, like a different season. And that's what's causing, you know, these earth changes, the sinkholes that opened up. We talked about the one last week. And then there's that hotel that just went down in somewhere in Florida. And yeah, I mean, it's like, that could be an engineering thing, or, you know, did the soil, you know, shift a little bit. Right out here in front of the house, we had a little bit of a sinkhole, and they said, oh, it's because the drain pipe rusted away. But when they dug the hole out there's just this underground river that had rusted the pipe away and caused a sinkhole out in front of the house. So it's like everywhere we're seeing little stories of sinkholes and everything. And it wouldn't surprise me if you know, the Earth's crust is moving around a little bit, if somehow the planet is getting excited. Yeah.
Birds acting weird. I've seen so many. I saw things. I'd never seen more than one robin in my backyard. Last month I saw four male robins, unheard of, because they're so territorial. What are four male robins? I mean, was she that good looking, the girl robin? But I mean, it's a four of them, you know, and that's unheard of. And I've seen like the corvids acting weird. Seagulls way inland when no plowing was being done. In fact, the seagulls actually vanished. There's a car park where on Sunday mornings, I get my breakfast, I get a sandwich, and I sit there, and I often feed the seagulls with what's left over, and the jackdaws and the crows. And the jackdaws and the crows are there, and the seagulls, who are the most hostile bastards when they want food, and they know exactly how this place works. They weren't around. So I always watch birds. Birds are a great insight into changes in nature.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because our next story, the headline literally reads, "Mystery illness strikes down birds across U.S. South and Midwest." Scientists are trying to find the cause of an affliction that leaves victims with crusty eyes, swollen faces, and the inability to fly. A mysterious illness is killing birds across several states in the South and Midwestern U.S., and wildlife scientists are rushing to try to find the cause, with many victims suffering from crusty eyes, swollen faces, and the inability to fly. Wildlife managers in Washington, Virginia, Maryland, and West Virginia first began receiving reports of sick and dying birds with the swollen eyes and crusty discharge, as well as neurological signs, in late May. According to a statement from the U.S. Geological Survey, which added, "No definitive cause of death is identifiable at this time." In Kentucky, the Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources is asking the public to report encounters with sick and dead birds through a new online reporting system. They say the species affected thus far have included blue jays, common grackles, and European starlings, but other species may also be affected. More than 20 samples have been sent out for testing. They go on, give a lot more examples, different states. Yeah, that's just interesting how your segue with watching birds went right into this one. So it seems like there's some very atmospheric theme running through all of this.
Yeah, and I didn't even know you were going to read that story about the birds.
I know.
the thing is with I mean, this all, you can throw all kinds of things out there as an environmental, as a technological, as some kind of technology doing it. I just find it interesting when you said starlings there, because you associate starlings with kind of the murmurations, and they all flying together, and they all having this kind of hive mind. You never see them flying. They'll see like you'll see them here doing it. You'll have like 1,000 star ones, and suddenly they'll turn like that, like shoals of fish, like they have this kind of free association in their minds. And so they have some kind of like exterior consciousness to themselves. That, you do wonder. I heard one story, one excuse for it is that, those insects, those cicadas that every 17 years or whatever they come out of the east. And I've seen them when I lived in New York, and the birds gorge on them, but they didn't. And they're saying, well, maybe the gorging on all these cicadas has made them die. But the fact is that they do that every 17 years, and this never happened before. So, I mean, again, is it something happening to the atmosphere, to the magnetic, the magnetic system?
It's saying right here, according to a 2007 study, mass mortality events are often related to weather.
A good one to test is pigeons. Pigeons are, homing pigeons. I'd be interested to see if they're getting lost in races. That's a big sport in this part of the world. And I've heard stories of pigeons all getting lost, and it's a big money sport, actually. A lot of gangsters involved in it, and these pigeons do get lost. But that would be definitely one to watch. Now, to throw another mix into it, they've discovered that a lot of these birds actually navigate by the stars at night, and if there has been a slight tilt in the earth, and they have very precise evolutionary codes within them to navigate by a certain stars, and then find themselves, even though it's only a half a degree off, and they end up in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean rather than ending up in, somewhere in North America or somewhere in Western Europe. This could be explaining things too. I mean, again, we're looking. Well, I think we have to kind of look outside for what's going on here.
I do remember reading a story or a report, it's been several years, but there was something that was going on with animals with natural navigational systems like whales, birds, anything that migrates. They were ending up in the completely wrong areas. And I think I do also remember them saying that a lot of like the aviation maps were having to be redone too, because the sonar or the radar or whatever it is that they use, they weren't going in the right directions.
Yeah, sardines is another one. They were all in the wrong place this year. They had there you go,
And Thomas, you're talking about pigeons. I was watching, I think it was Suspicious Observers channel, and he was talking about maybe 5 days ago or so that there was a group of, I think they were either racing pigeons or homing pigeons, but there was a group of somebody's pigeons disappeared, a big flock or something that someone had purchased and spent a lot of money on, vanished. So,
someone told me that this week. In fact, it's funny. There's a synchronicity there. I don't know where. It was in Spain. They were in Spain on holiday, and they said that the Spanish police were trying to get into properties because the racing pigeons had all landed in the wrong place, and these pigeons are worth a lot of money because big money's bet on them. And there was like they were trying to find all the pigeons that were missing. So here you go again.
Yeah.
Go ahead. This brings me back to our first story too, with the directed energy weapons. Could it be that these aren't directed energy weapons that we're seeing, that maybe this is something that human beings are experiencing the same way that the birds are?
And they're using as a handy excuse.
Yeah, or as a good news story. It sounds great. It's a great headline, and we liked it. But, they
did mention in this article too that the cicadas that you had mentioned, Thomas, they were plagued by a fungus that makes their body rot away. So the birds are eating these cicadas that have a weird fungus in them. Could that be part of it? I mean, there's probably a lot of pieces to it, but it's interesting.
I couldn't imagine starlings eating cicadas. Starlings are very small, and they eat like mosquitoes and gnats and those tiny flies. That's what they eat. So I doubt they'd be eating cicadas, because their cicadas are quite big. They're about, they're like a beetle type thing. So again,
they're meaty.
It's like with the whole global warming thing. They tell us to look inside the atmosphere, and I always said, what about the sun? What about the sun? And it's the same thing. They have an obsession with keeping us look inside this closed environment, but we are basically a product of what's outside it.
Yeah, and I mean they keep, with this whole talk again about climate change lockdowns and that bullshit, that it would be very easy for them to capitalize on something natural to be able to push their agenda. Like if they knew that there was some kind of, if we're going into an ice age, and before the ice age occurred, there would be climate shifts all over the planet, and if they were aware of that kind of information, if that kind of stuff was recorded and kept in books underneath the Vatican, and they knew, okay, sometime around 2021 to 2025 is the date everybody's talking about, that, yeah, maybe they would, use that to their advantage to push an agenda while they still have, the internet and the means to do the social engineering through the media.
There are Inuit people in northern Canada who said that the sun has been rising in the wrong place for years now, a good 11 years. It doesn't rise when it should and doesn't rise where it should or set where it should. Now, because they have a very finite solar day, they have very precise memories of it lands between those two hills or that lake over there. But funny enough, like I know I say this every few years, but I did wake up here last month and the sun was shining in the northern light of my living room in a place I've never seen it before. Now, granted, it was 4 a.m, and I'm not always up at 4 a.m, but it struck me how bright the sun was in this one. It was literally shining where I am right now, and the window was north facing, and I never noticed that before. Now, it's easy to say, oh well, and people say, well, things would stay. If that would, here's an interesting one. They would say things like, we'd notice it right away because of GPS, but GPS is calibrated to the Earth. It's not calibrated to the stars. And I think a lot of those telescopes, like go-to scopes, I think they're actually calibrated to GPS. So if they were updating their software, say Polaris was in the wrong place, right? Someone has a go-to scope. Well, it found Polaris, no problem. But if that is calibrated to the modern ones, is calibrated to GPS. Well, of course it will find it because it's the GPS will be constantly fixing it, calibrating correctly, and it'll be easy to say, well, Polaris moved over the degree, so calibrate that. So, I mean, it does. I'd be lying if I said it doesn't freak me out some days. It doesn't. When Greg Moffat on Legalized Freedom had a thing about it about a month ago, and there's a theory knocking around that that there's going to be colossal earth changes. And the establishment, whatever, think that the best thing is for people to stay where they live until it passes. And that the cover story, just like in 2001: A Space Odyssey, is a fake pandemic.
Yeah, and then we were just talking about giants, and on the symposium about isolated groups of civilizations that are on islands out in the middle of nowhere. And it's like, well, if it's a magnetic pole change or whatever it is that causes the oceans to move so that suddenly there are new islands and suddenly areas that were once under the ocean are now above ground, that would make sense why we have these seemingly now isolated pockets of civilizations, where before, the South Pacific might have been, one continent the last time around. And we're just seeing, the moai and the different megalithic structures that are covered up to their necks in mud because the whole earth moved around, and they got buried under the last time this occurred. So if this happened again, we'd find the same thing, maybe the Statue of Liberty, like in like
in Easter Island.
The Mediterranean was probably just a sunken plain until something happened and dumped a chunk of Atlantic into it.
And I was
the tiny Straits of Gibraltar,
And I was saying last time, like the Sphinx, to me, the way that, you look at the photos from the I want to say the late 19th century, the late 1800s, the way that it was partially understand, that looks to me like, if you've ever had an aquarium before and you've got the little decorations down there and you've got power heads moving the tide around, things gradually get, underwater. They get that kind of that kind of weathering, and they get buried in the sand. So to me, it looks like the Sahara Desert last time around was probably underwater, and the Sphinx and the pyramids and all that may have been from maybe 2 times ago, the civilization that were there. That's what I keep thinking. The Sphinx to me looks like it had been weathered by being under ocean and underwater currents, not by 12,000 years of rain. I would say, well, maybe 12,000 years of being underwater and being eroded. So that just makes me think, is that going to occur again? And are we going to, all of us, that's why there's so much emphasis, I think, on cave systems throughout the world. We'll see, people that have gone into caves, like Turkey and that part. Maybe people, there are, ancient texts that talk about, yeah, this shit happens. And sometimes the best place to hide is underground, maybe, depending on where you are on the planet. Who knows?
Well, I know we tend to avoid conspiracy on this station, but I just want to throw this in because it might be relevant. You had the nonsense with Bill Gates and his wife, and suddenly he's gone. There's banished, a persona non grata. And you have this guy Hancock in England, who is basically the COVID czar, was caught snogging a woman and breaking social distances rule. And suddenly he stepped down. It's almost like, are they now getting ready to go underground? Because I can tell you for a fact, I know they've been building vast underground bases all over the world, particularly in Britain. And I have a friend who lives in Yeovil in the south of England, and he told me right up that they had built literally cities under, where all RAF bases were, entire cities under the ground. So, and are they creating these fake scandals in order to get the ones who serve them so well? To getting them all vaccinated and everything. Are these now going to be all going underground to wait it out until things are over?
Wasn't there some story recently, something about Bill Gates trying to shoot some sort of particle towards the sun? And I know that that's kind of an old story that's been talked about before.
He wanted to fill this upper atmosphere with chalk dust to create a diffusion effect to stop global warming. But I don't think that would have done it anyway, because on a cloudy day, you're still as warm as you are on a sunny day, because it just that'll just trap the heat inside, which is even more sinister when you start thinking about it. It's even what you're trying to create a thermal barrier to keep the heat in, even in winter. So even that's peculiar, like his solution was actually, to anyone was a basic understanding of insulating your house, would know that that's actually the other way around. That will just keep the heat in.
Bring it into an oven.
Yeah. So again, where we seem to be falling into a theme in this show, air changes, something's happening with the planet, and they're not telling us, and they've got all kinds of funny stories. But we're through the series of dot connecting, we're seeing things all over the world and in nature. That's probably like, and I mean, today is remarkable. I'm just looking at the temperature map where you guys are, but the whole North America on that side, that is a freak show of
it's
climate.
Brutal.
It's a freak show, and it's not right, and it shouldn't. I've never heard anything like that. 47 degrees in the Yukon. Give me a break. Celsius, whatever that is, like 120 or something.
Well, you want to take it away with the psychic weather report?
Is it bad? Is it great? Are you happy? Are you irate? The weekend psychic weather.
Psychic weather report. The theme of this week's psychic weather is confusion. Coming on from the bewilderment last week, some friends of mine, particularly a friend in England who lives in a cul-de-sac, was telling me that people were just driving into the cul-de-sac where he lived and looking around like, where am I? How did I get here? And I thought it was kind of funny at first. And then I noticed it's happening on the roads here. I'm seeing people signaling and indicating to turn off. And then they turn off the road and they're like this, looking around. So we went from bewilderment last week to confusion. So the psychic weather this week is the great confusion. And there seems to be, among the NPCs who I use as barometers for this stuff, an element of, where am I? How did I get here? What am I doing here? As if some force led them there, or else blocked them out and made them go there, and they didn't know why they ended up there. Almost like they were drunk while they were sober and said, how the hell did I end up here? And this seems to be what's going on a lot on the roads. And I would like to know why. And I see lots of headless chicken type behavior going on. Is this related to changes in the sun or the Earth's magnetism? Who knows? Are these the birds, the cuckoos themselves, in their own bird brains, affected by the same things that are affecting the birds in the East Coast of the United States? We'll only find out. But I'll tell you one thing, while they're in this state and they're not Renfielding and attacking us, it's okay. The psychic weather this week would be On a 0 to 10 pathological scale, I'd say about a 3. They're out of our face, getting lost, and they're not causing any great danger to us. This week's psychic weather is confusion, but calm.
Is it bad? Is it great? Are you happy? Are you irate? The week in psychic weather.
So again, here we go. This is an interesting one. This has kind of been flying around all over the news, and some of it's been found to be pretty boring. But this one says, this is from the New York Times. It says, U.S. has no explanation for unidentified objects and stops short of ruling out aliens. It's come out as being bunk. They don't know what it is. They're not giving us any information on it. I like the saying, NASA, never a straight answer, is actually what that stands for. So that seems to be, again, with where we're at with the whole UAP, UFO, Disclosure Act. They're not giving us anything. They make a big deal with an attention-grabbing headline, and then there's nothing there.
Yeah, exactly is what I thought would happen. They would actually give nothing. I mean, I love this thing like aliens may exist. Well, how many billions of planets are there just in billions of stars are there? I mean, they have to exist just by calculation numbers. That's a different thing, I know, than them actually being here. But I honestly do believe they don't know what those lights are. I think they're bewildered by them as well. And I think the fact is an interesting one. And not a prediction, but something that might happen. During history, these lights have been seen in the sky during times of social crisis. And most famous ones being over Switzerland, where they were painted what they call a battle in the sky. It's a famous piece of artwork in the 1500s. But the most famous one of all, and amazingly played down, it's one of the most amazing 14 events in history. On the night before the Third Reich marched into Austria and annexed the country, basically the start of World War II, and the enormous lights, just flashing lights and strange lights were seen all over Europe that could be seen from Moscow all the way to New York. And they were the epicenter was directly above Central Europe, where the Third Reich were marching into Austria. And these lights are directly related to human consciousness and fears, primal fears. And I think they were telling the truth, the US military, when they're saying we don't know what they are. I think they really do believe that. And the aliens thing has always been a handy excuse to say, well, it's just spacemen or something like that, because that keeps people up. But how ufologists amaze me. How they can still, trust governments after all this time to tell them the truth is beyond me. It's like, the typical ufologist, I don't trust government, I don't trust policemen, I don't trust the military. Oh, until they talk about UFOs, then I believe everything they say. It's amazing how well they have them trained. Amazing how well they have them trained. But I knew this whole heap of nothing was going to come out. And it's definitely nothing to do with spacemen and aliens visiting this planet. And I honestly do believe that they don't have a clue what they are. And it bothers them too. And it's because it's something outside their control.
Right. Well, if we're dealing with the human consciousness thing, that's something that we're all involved in. They don't get to just isolate it and make it theirs and, come out with some story and, own it.
Yeah, I mean, Carl Jung, his first book, Flying Saucers, the first book on flying saucers ever written, he said, it makes perfect sense that man would project his phobias and terrors into the sky, and they would manifest as strange lights and strange visions. And so this whole thing might be that. I mean, the fact the U.S. Navy is an interesting operation. It kind of regulates reality in many ways. Google Maps and Google Earth, although they're all U.S. Navy satellites, they're all run by U.S. Our view of the Earth is given to us by the U.S. Navy. All the GPS, the satellites they have up there, do the clock speed and the GPS. They're all U.S. Navy too, and they all have to be. They're constantly recalibrated to make changes because of Einstein's relativity theory. That the further you get away from Earth, the speed of time changes. So when I heard this thing last year that the US Navy had reality-changing technology, well, basically that's what they already have in terms of their ability to control our visual aspect of the air through Google Earth and Google Maps, and also the time satellites. And it wasn't surprising to me. I mean, I don't know how many jets the US Navy has, but I'm sure it's a hell of a lot less than the US Air Force. Why isn't the US Air Force come out? And it was US Navy pilots who were coming out and all this. I find that very interesting. I mean, I'm sure where all the US Air Force pilots, I'm sure they have better jets, different jets, better cameras. And I think there's something very funny going on here that probably goes, I think if there was one Fortean branch of the US military, it'd be the Navy, going right back to the Montauk experiment and the Philadelphia experiment. And that messing about with reality has never left them. And I think that's why they're controlling the UFO narrative now.
Yeah, something just occurred to me when you were talking about how it's strange that it's the Navy and not the Air Force. And then, we're talking about consciousness and fears being projected. Well, the Navy, they are the ones that submerge, right? They go underneath. So if we're talking about projected fears in a collective conscious way, that it would kind of make sense that they'd be the ones to come out with whatever story or be the ones to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, people don't know about it, but the US Navy is probably the most powerful force on the planet today in terms of actual technical ability. I mean, the reason why we're able to talk with you right now is because of their ability to control time using satellites and to augment changes in the theory of relativity. It's an amazing thing. Those satellites they're using are in a different space-time than we are. Now, you telling me that they haven't played games to jump realities and to jump through different aspects of time and stuff. If anyone has a time machine, it's absolutely the US Navy. Absolutely.
Jason, did you see anything in your time spent in the military?
Unfortunately, no. I was just in the band, but I was going to say the one thing that's really cool about the Navy's intelligence program is they probably have the best insignia for intelligence. They've got the eye in the pyramid, and it just absolutely looks cool. I'm a big nerd for all the military insignia stuff, and I've always been a fan of their intelligence corps emblem. But again, with the U.S. Navy and everything, going back to Ron Hubbard and the Babylon working with Parsons, there's that connection there too. That he may have been a rogue agent by the end of his career as a naval intelligence officer, but again, he was absolutely fucking brilliant. And I'm sure he may have been recruited into naval intelligence, and because of his innate ability. And there's got to be other folks out there like him, probably still today, that have that kind of tremendous ability, and would be working on this kind of technology, or would have the foresight to kind of create this technology.
Yeah, there was a thing too that just about the Scottish Rite Freemasonry. The Scottish Rite is massive in the US Navy. And for years, you could not get a commission of a ship unless you were a member of the Scottish Rite Freemasonry and were either Irish American or Scottish American. And they all had names like Morrison, MacDonald, McCarthy, these kinds of names, Armstrong, all these either Scotch, Irish, or Irish names. It was almost like a closed club of Freemasons that have their roots going back to this part of the world. Jim Morrison's father was involved in the Gulf of Tonkin psyop, and he was a big shot in the US Navy as well, and that was all tied up with Freemasons and everything. So the US Navy gets a buy on a lot of things, but it's a very, very, very interesting organization. And while ufologists are down around Groom Lake in Area 51 or Rendlesham in England, and are looking for all these UFOs, where they really need to be looking are things like the Philadelphia Navy Yard and anywhere, Newport News down in Virginia. This is where the real stuff is going on in technology, and the strangeness of technology, and the Navy is controlling it. And they have everyone scurrying around the desert in New Mexico looking for lights when the real stuff is probably going off the coasts. I mean, I was living in New York when Flight 777 went down, and I know people who said that was absolutely a strange light flew up from the sea and hit the plane, and it blew up in the sky. And because it was just off the coast of Long Island. It was a summer's evening, and everyone was out on the beach, and thousands saw it. And there was the U.S. Navy was testing a new weapon system right off the coast there. And it happened right adjacent to Brookhaven National Laboratories, which is another very, very strange place on the tip of Long Island near Montauk. And that's very heavily controlled by the Navy as well. So I mean, it's like they're not only controlling reality in many ways on this world, but now with their whole involvement with the UFO thing, they're controlling reality off world. Look, I would appeal to UFO investigators. If I had the time, I'd be doing it. Stop looking at Groom Lake and the Air Force and the Army and start having a look at naval ships. Start examining the US Navy around the world, what they're up to and what they're doing. Because I tell you, that's where you need to be really looking.
Yeah, that's a good point. Jason, this one actually took place right by you up in your neck of the woods. Seattle zombie woman, the true story behind the TikTok video, which I have not watched the video yet, so we'll make ssure we link that for you guys and you guys can all check it out. Says several videos on TikTok that show a woman who looks like a zombie have gone viral, with the first of the videos being published on May 6th of this year. Shea Brown shared the original clip, although it was later deleted, and this sparked all kinds of theories. With some saying that the woman must have been part of a movie set, and others believing that she was in a genuinely bad state. She goes on to say, I want folks to know that the police did come and that care was administered to her. She was taken to a local hospital, but no further updates on what happened to her have been released since then. In a city like Seattle, it is not uncommon for people to not have the resources to properly care for their mental health or housing and their addiction. So unfortunately, it's not uncommon to hear someone screaming like that in the middle of the day. But then again, with your psychic weather report and talking about just the chicken with their head cut off type syndrome, this goes right along with that. So we'll have to make sure.
Some trigger. What are you going to say, Jason?
Yeah, I was going to say, I've seen the TikTok videos, and it could very well be something from a movie set, because the way that this person's body looked, it looked like there was no face on it. There's just one tuft of hair here. The legs were all looked like a body that was partially decomposed and was barely animated. It was the creepiest thing. I've tried to find a video of it, and I'll see if we can link one here in this, but it was either someone who was just in like a terrible explosion and got their body torn up, or it did look like some kind of necromancy thing, which wouldn't surprise me with all the biotech stuff that we have going on here in the Pacific Northwest, with some of that going on, and just up the street from where I live, that if they were experimenting with cadavers and that kind of necromancy that occurs where they somehow reanimated a body and it got out.
There was a guy. Sorry, there was a guy on TV here a few years ago, and he was a World War I veteran, a good few years ago. And they were saying like the horrors of World War I and what he saw. And he says, what was the most disturbing thing you saw? I'm just thinking he's going to say I killed fellas. And he said he was in front of him, an officer was walking, and his head was blown off as he was walking. And he continued to walk for about 20 or 30 yards. With a normal pace and gait, as if he was walking before when he had a head, and then collapsed. And he said that was, of all the things he saw, that was the one thing that stays with him most of all. Not that he'd lost his head, but he continued to be able to walk.
That's mind blowing, literally.
But
but there's lots of videos of people suddenly flipping. You ever see these videos? Like I saw one in the subway in the underground in England on a train. And she starts going, like she starts changing slowly at first, and then her eyeballs rolling back into her head. And I was like, it's something that's triggered it. And one day I was walking down the street in Dublin, not too long ago, about a year and a half ago, and there was this black man was walking towards me. It was quiet. It was a Sunday morning, and there was not many people around. And he was coming towards me, and he was walking along just comparatively normal. And then he stopped. I stopped, and he started going like this, like he was having a mental breakdown. And I was like, Jesus, the poor guy, like I was thinking like, you don't know what, he could have been a refugee, what he went through from Africa to get to here. You don't know what he saw, what he had to deal with, smugglers and whatever. And he was having a flashback. But what struck me was that before he went into that state, he was completely fine. You wouldn't know that the man had any kind of psychiatric issue. It was like that. That's what disturbs me the most, is it just seems to be a trigger that makes it happen.
Sudden onset, the directed energy weapons could be used also for things like mental disturbances in people and causing psychotic breaks.
Well, they could probably grab the nervous system some way too. Like that's why I brought the story that so the officer had his head shut off. his nervous system continued to operate as if he was still had a brain and was walking. Maybe if they could take control of your nervous system and do these things, like there's that famous story of Crowley was walking down the street in New York and he gave a demonstration of magic and he put himself inside a guy's body and he took his nervous system over. Well, if you can do that with your mind and telekinesis, surely it can be done with a weapon or some kind of machine.
Oh, absolutely. I would be shocked if they hadn't developed something like that.
Yeah,
did you ever see the thing of the two Swedish twins that ran into the motorway in England? Did you ever hear about that story?
No.
Oh, that's an incredible story. About, I don't know, 15 years ago, there was a TV show in England about like traffic cops. And these two blonde women suddenly are arrested for causing a disturbance somewhere. And they run out into the middle of the road. One is clearly seen crushed underneath the wheels of a big, what you call a tractor trailer, a truck with a cab, and another one is run over, knocked over the roof of a car, and they get up and continue to fight the cops. The cops took them back, and they had this superhuman strength. The cops couldn't retrain them, and they took them back, and they let them go that afternoon because they really didn't have anything on them. And one of them was walking around aimlessly, and some guy picked her up and took her home, and she murdered him. And she got away with that as well. Now, the weird thing about the story is one of those twins was living in Sweden and one of them was living in the west of Ireland in a kind of a New Age cult. And they, for some reason, they ended up in this bus in England at the same time. And they had both, as if some kind of Manchurian thing had brought them there. But they had and it's look at it, it's called Terror on the M25. Just put Swedish twins motorway incident, and there's documentaries about them, and you know, everyone, there's loads of comments on the documentary by people saying, oh yeah, I work for the MI5 and you would not believe what goes on in these labs underground, human testing and mind control stuff and all this kind of thing. And if you ever want proof that there are kind of military operations that program people, the Swedish twins one is it. Yeah,
here it is.
The truck runs over her and she gets up and continues to fight the cops.
The Erickson twins, Ursula and Sabina.
Yeah.
What are their names? All right, I'll have to look more into this. That's disturbing.
And it really wouldn't surprise me if, you know, we were talking about controlling a nervous system. If someone's body who was freshly killed, if they were able to electronically or through microwaves or whatever, reanimate somehow that body, you know, control the nervous system remotely from someone who, you know, from a body who, you know, the being had already passed on into the reincarnation cycle, and use that body as an automaton. And that's kind of what my inclination towards this story is, that somehow that it could have been a reanimated corpse. Like if you know, somebody had just died in a car accident and, you know, the body was all looked like it had been burnt. If you guys, because to me, this doesn't look like someone who's just crazy or insane. I've seen plenty of that. And that this person, the body didn't look like a normal human body, especially there's just this one tuft of hair, and it looked like the entire skin of the face had basically been torn off and the legs were all messed up. So
galvanism, that's where the roots, that's the idea the Frankenstein story came from. And that's video I have on Frankenstein's castle, the guy called Conrad Dippel, he had used galvanism, which is putting electric currents through the human body in order to reanimate muscles. When this was first discovered in the early 1800s, late 1700s, they used to put electrodes to frogs' legs and they would kick dead frogs' legs or dismembered. And they started doing it in human bodies. That's when they discovered that the human body was actually worked by electricity. This amazed them. So they thought we could bring people back to life or have people who are paralyzed by putting electric currents in them. We could make but they didn't realize how complex it was now. But it could be something like that, these experiments in like a kind of a modern version of galvanism. And right from the early days on, there was tremendous, debates over the ethics of it. Another thing too is you could have a fungus that could enter a dead body and reanimate it. Now this is a really good one. There are lots of parasites that live in our brains that cause us to do things, including one, there's one Plaxiotoxmosis, I think it's called, and it actually causes you to have sex with strangers because that's how it moves through body fluids, and it gets into people's brains and makes them go to singles bars and pick people up. and have in sexual encounters with people they don't know, and it actually controls their brain. And they reckon there's lots of these strange behaviors in humans are controlled by this. Now there's an ant. There's a kind of a grub that can get inside an ant, and this is well known. And it eats into the ant's body, and then it takes over the ant's nervous system and drives it like a machine. And what it's doing, it's looking for a cow turd, and it drives the ant's dead body to a cow turd, and then the fluke go into the cow turd. The cow eats I'm wrong. It comes out of the cow turd. It finds an ant which is on the cow turd eating, goes into the body, scoops the ant's insides out, and then works it like a machine, like Transformers. Walks it to the grass where the cows are grazing. The cows eat the grass. The fluke goes into the cow system, and the cycle begins again. Now we're talking about a fluke, basically a very simple creature, and it has the intelligence to know how to drive an ant. Like this is the whole Rupert Sheldrake morphic resonance thing. Like, what if it's something like that, even, like that kind of like thing, that someone was on the slab and the body came to life, this kind of thing, and walked out of the hospital.
Yeah, the Seattle Medical Examiner's building is right there near where this happened too. I used to live nearby there, and then same thing too, right there with the biotech stuff. I mean, they're using CRISPR and all the gene editing software there, where they're manipulating, and we're in the age of manufactured viruses and stuff. So if they're playing with DNA from kind of stuff with gain of function technology, like I would imagine that fungus that you're talking about, being able to take something like that and edit it while they're experimenting with this kind of stuff. So could be a combination. The whole thing is kind of Lovecraftian at the end of the day, kind of thing that you're always talking about, Thomas. But yeah, it's creepy, and it's
reanimators.
Yeah. But yeah, it's tragic nonetheless. And whomever's body that belonged to, it's absolutely tragic. Nothing to make fun of. But
well, nothing has changed since the day of the grave robbers. When they used to have to put metal cages over graves to stop medical students from stealing bodies, so they could learn how to do autopsies. Nothing has really changed since then.
All right, you guys. Well, that's pretty much a wrap on our second episode. Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
No, I think this was a fantastic episode this week, and I think the comments will just absolutely light up, because it's something that these are what we talk about as a kind of a spooky common theme. Because I told Timony and Jason not to tell me what was going to the topics were, and yet we all like kind of jumped into each other, which tells me there's something really, really to
that. Was perfect. That couldn't have been planned. That was great.
Yeah, there's something to this. So, set fire to the comments below, because I tell you something, we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff not only in this show, but all of us amongst our friends and everything in the months and years ahead. We are definitely in the week in Strange. Yeah, it's the eon of Strange.
Yes, it is.
Send us your strange stories.
Very much so. Thank you guys so much for being here again with me today. Thomas, you have a great night over there in Ireland, and keep your eyes out for those clouds. I forgot the name of them already. Noctilucent. There we go.
Yep.
And Jason, stay cool over there. I know you don't have air conditioner during this heat wave, so take another cold shower. Do what you gotta do.
Likewise. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Bye.